Hello, 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 Tampa Bay listeners and beyond. You've got everything PEO, Money Talk 1010 AM. I'm Evan Collart.
I'm Lionel Francis.
We've got a great show in store for you today. Man, it's a little chilly out there. Be merry, be safe, get home. But it's getting hot in here this afternoon.
It's been chilly for real.
No.
Everyone's losing their minds right now.
Walking my dogs at 6 a.m., man, this didn't feel like Florida for a second.
Well, they expect colder weather's coming. I hear it's 49 the high on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, Christmas may actually feel like Christmas this year.
Not 85 degrees in the pool.
Well, we got to get into it. Like always, we always start this show by taking a quick second and throwing some homage to last week's guest. We had Liz Haggett with Trademans for Triumph. Kind of a neat program over there, a social media group in charge of finding skilled, quality, more importantly, insured contractors in the rebirth of Fort Myers area.
Yeah,
and
I was impressed with her. She might be able to give Angie List a run for her money soon.
Get some capital, get ready.
But I found it impressive that she just sat there one day and just found there was a need for helping agents and contractors finding some business and making sure they're compliant before they go into the job. So it was impressive to hear her story, how she started it.
Yep.
Actually in a room in her hotel because she lost pretty much almost everything at her place, at her home.
Yeah.
So it was good.
Having a husband in the trades probably didn't hurt for the idea, but really just the growth and just, literally 90 days time to be over 6,200 members and counting, kudos to her.
Yeah. Very impressed that she's making sure they're compliant, having that conversation to make sure do you have the coverage that you need before we put you in these places so you can start work. I was impressed with that as well.
Yeah, right? Fair. Very fair. I mean, heck, we barely find enough general contractors taking the time to police compliance to that level. So good job for T, and we hope to have her back here real soon. But like anything, I always say, the page must turn. We got to get on with it. We want to hear from you today, listeners. 888-404-1010. That's 888-404-1010. In the studio with us today, Tobin Robeck, VP over at Construction Casualty Insurance, one of the country's premier P&C agencies. Also co-founder on CompCorrect, kind of an artificial intelligence claims management program. Tobin, thanks for joining us in the studios today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
What are we going to get into today with our listeners?
Just looking forward to talking a little bit about the workers' compensation process and the claims process and what the market looks like.
Fair. That could probably be showed for a month straight. It's a doozy, and we always like to kind of bring it to the forefront for our listeners. So thank you for taking the time. We're glad to have you today.
Glad to be here.
Awesome.
What are we getting into today, Lionel?
Well, let's get into it. I know we've had these conversations, and hopefully the agents are listening to us. Here it is again. The rates are dropping. It's coming. 1/1. We're actually implementing it now with the new rates. So for those companies who are getting the new rates right now, we're happy for you. We understand it's been tough out there with all the other interest rates going up everywhere else. So we're champions for you, and we're happy that's happening. But we're going to get into the other side, our side of the business,
sure,
of what we're seeing in the future that's going to happen, that can happen, and want to make sure everyone's prepared and aware of that situation.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Lionel. I mean, the reality is, the business owner champions the fact that his rates are going down, right? We're on the heels of a 10th straight rate decrease. But it's almost getting to the point of historic lows. The workers' comp rates have never been lower in the state of Florida, to the point that carriers are literally leaving. We've talked about this over the past few weeks. We have 3 major carriers leaving the state come 1/1. And, the business owner is as happy as he is, his premiums are down. It's getting tough to find insurance. And one of the biggest things that always comes with low rates is a consent to rate or a surcharge to your premiums. And no one likes that.
No, let's dive into that because some of them are going to ask, what do you mean consent to rate? There's the possibility, and we see it happening with your mod, which we consider pretty much like your credit score, depending on how many claims you've had and the premium that we've captured. Say your mod is a 1.80%. Consent to rate, you're going to end up paying the cost of that percentage on that mod or even more. For these carriers that might not want to write these types of risks anymore, you might be left with just 2 choices. Either no, they won't write it, or the second one, we'll write it, but we're going to charge you more for it.
Yeah. Oh, and don't forget the state will always swoop in, save the day, and in a lot of cases triple your premiums. And I'm sure you're seeing this a lot, Tobin, as well, right? Consent to rate sometimes can be stacked on top of an increased mod, right? And in that example Lionel just gave, a 1.80 mod, that would be the equivalent of a 80% surcharge to your rates. But this business of profitability, it's tough. Business owners, they don't want to hear about their carriers being profitable. But the reality is you need a healthy carrier to even be there to insure you, right? And with the rates going down, right, in turn, indemnity benefits got increased to up to 5 years a few years back. The attorney cap got lifted a few years back. So that means the claims are going up, the rates are going down, and these carriers can very quickly get unbalanced. And hence why some are pulling out of the state next year. They've just simply found this state from a workers' comp standpoint to no longer to be profitable for them. This is very, just like homeowners a few years ago. Well, it's been more than a few now, but I think we remember those 3 hurricanes ripping through the middle of the state, and it was at 07, 08. And then coincidentally, a year later, everyone had to get their homeowners with Citizens. And that's kind of the carrier that swooped in and saved the day then when no one else would write it. And we're very quickly breaching a time period where that could happen in the comp market.
Yeah, understand, if you're asking a carrier to provide you $1 million policy across the board, that's a lot of money. And so they want to make sure everything's in place and they can continue to do that and provide you the coverage that they need. And with the rates dropping right now, we see a couple of things that are going to happen in the horizon. We just want to make sure you guys are informed about it.
Definitely. I mean, what's behind it? If you don't get a consent to rate and you don't get an increased mod, then typically that means because they'll issue a non-renewal, right? And again, everyone's happy the rates are going down. No one's happy if then they just backdoor a surcharge or really just get off of you entirely. That we had that save of the week last week at this grocery store. Literally had a $20,000 premium on an average year. They had a slip and fall that turned into a $111,000 claim. They had a slip and fall sprained ankle that turned into an $80,000 claim. And next thing you know, their premium had an increased mod and a CTR, surcharging it to nearly $100,000. So it's a snowball, and the snowball gets bigger and bigger as it rolls down the hill. Hence why PEOs and agents partnering with PEOs really is starting to be a very common occurrence in this industry. If you don't want to take your insured to the state fund, you don't want to hit one of those tier 1 through 3 surcharged approach, you always have the PEO to kind of come in and help you out.
Yeah, and we're willing to have these conversations with any agency or any agent to discuss PEO and how it work and benefit them. Our biggest concern, which we will see, PEO will be the front line eventually. It is right now, but even more, especially what's about to come later on. But we want to make sure you know that, hey, we're here to help. We want to make sure your clients are compliant. We want to make sure they're still your client, because you're running the risk of somebody else walking into one of your clients and saying, hey, give me an opportunity to see if I can help you out. Bring them to a PEO, and we're able to help them out and get them what they need. And then there's the risk a few months later of your other lines of business.
No, great point, Lionel, right? At the end of the day, if you're the agent that brings in the solution, there really is no point to run that risk. And that's another virtually never talked about in this space when partnering with a PEO is by not allowing another agent to come in and save the day. If you have that non-renewal or that CTR option, partnering with a PEO makes sure that all your other lines stay safe, or as safe as they can be. Okay. Another thing that really just it's kind of on the forefront, not talked about a ton of times, and I'm sure Tobin can relate with this. Most of his clients, even when he does or they do issue a standard market policy, they outsource their payroll anyways. Whether it's to an ADP, a Paychex, heck, even banks are doing payroll these days. They've gotten into this game a few years back. They want all those employees to come in and establish checking accounts, and they wised up. We'll do your payroll for next to nothing. So if you're working with a business owner who has a standard market policy and is outsourcing their payroll to a third party anyways, I don't know what the big miss is there, right? Maybe there's a lack of understanding. Maybe you're fairly new in the industry, and when you're coming up through insurance school, you're just not really taught partnering with PEOs. They're more taught the enemy versus, another feather in the cap, arrow in the quiver, however you want to, metaphorically call it, but we're allies in this thing. We only write comp. We keep all your other lines safe. And we combine those two services of having a policy and a payroll service under one roof at a discount. It's an economies of scale play. And that the $1,000,000 question is, if by outsourcing to a PEO, you're able to reduce your cost, reduce your bottom line, hey, business owner, is it worth it to you? And if you're their incumbent agent, you should be the one, giving that value proposition.
Yeah, listen, agents, there shouldn't be any fear at all working with a PEO. Sometimes that fear, and we've heard it, well, we're concerned about you taking the other lines of business. That's not what we want to do. We're taking our legs from under us if we're doing that to you. We're concerned with the workers' comp only, making sure they're compliant, making sure you keep them on board. So having this partnership with a PEO is going to be great for you and great for your client as well. And right now, with this time and what's happening, we're expecting the mods increasing. We're expecting more claims that might occur, and having a PEO that can answer all those questions and be there for your clients and walk them through the steps of everyday happening as running a business. Every day something that's happening and issues with the business. You got a PEO can answer those questions for you.
Sure, and for anyone that's really, listening, wondering the how, the why of this, it's very simple, right? Instead of you obtaining a standard market policy in your actual business name, what you're doing is you're borrowing the PEOs, right? And to borrow the PEOs, you have to be on their payroll. So that's why those two functions come hand in hand, right? We hear it all the time. Hey, I can do my own payroll, but can't you just give me the comp? Right? But to essentially jump on that master plan, I hate to call it a pool. When I hear a pooled plan, I hear that if someone else has claims, I'm affected by it. So it certainly isn't that, right? It's still first dollar coverage. You're still individualized within the PEO space, right? But it's a economies of scale play. By jumping on their master policy, you're able to reduce your bottom line. And the big kicker is we don't have to go off the experience modifier, right? Let's go back to Lionel's example a few moments ago, talking about the 1.8 mod, which would really equate to an 80% surcharge to your rates if you were to get that standard market policy. Right? PEOs do not have to price off of that. It's a master policy already set in place. So really what we're looking at is trends. How are you trending from a payroll standpoint? How are you trending from a claim standpoint? Do you have a frequency issue? Do you have a severity issue? Or have you gone 2 years claim free and everything's trending the right way? You got your safety in place, your ducks are in a row, you're OSHA compliant, and due to all those steps that you've put in place since your last big injury, now you've gone claim free, they're going to price you on your trend versus just simply what the mod is. There's no escaping the experience modifier in the standard market play. You have to assess that premium surcharge to it per each carrier.
But the biggest plus of jumping on board with a PEO, you adopt their experience mod for us. So as for example, right now, Southeast Personal Leasing with over 8,000 clients, I can't tell you how many employees that we have on board. Our mod for 2023 is 0.77.
That's a great mod,
That's
right?
huge.
So for anyone listening, anything under a 1.0 mod, that means a discount to the rates. So Southeast is literally at a buying power of having a 23%, 0.77?
Yeah, 0.77.
23% discount to the rates, right? Our save of the week just a couple of months ago, this guy trying to get on the Anheuser-Busch project had to have a modifier under 1.0. Was not able to do that, right? Due to his losses, he paid out more in claims than he did premium. In a couple of years in a row, his mod crept up on him, but he was able to put him in with the PEO, able to issue that modifier on the rate sheet, got him on the job. I mean, that was one of our better saves of the week. I was pretty proud of that one.
And I hope they heard that, Evan. You might want to bring that up again to make sure they understand. You adopt the PEO's mod. So if you have a high mod, while we're bringing you on board, giving you the rates you need to continue doing business, providing the coverage, and now you're bidding on the job, and there's a couple of them that will not talk to you if your mod is anything over 1.00. You adopt a mod that's lower than that. Now you could put in for that bid for the job and get it.
Now let's keep rolling on this.
Plus.
I'm loving this,
Yeah.
right? Not only do we get to pick up on the PEO's mod, but we also get to adopt their state unemployment rate, right? Going back to last week's grocery store, last week's save of the week, right? This account, most grocery stores, it's a high turnover business, right? Cream rises to the top. The good employees end up in management. It's not before too long. If they're stagnant growth or can't move up, they move on to greener pastures. And so that just creates a higher turnover market. You know, that grocery store had over 40 employees. Just on the state unemployment savings alone last week, there was nearly 7,000 in savings off their bottom line. So it's not always about the savings, right? We come in, we process your payroll. Everybody that gets a paycheck through the service is covered for comp. That's that broad stroke. But it turns into a full back office lightning, right? Claims management on both comp and unemployment. It's a big, big miss in the PEO industry, rarely spoken about. But I'd like to ring that bell pretty hard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, everyone, stay tuned. We're gonna get Tobin on these calls in a little bit, and we're gonna ask him a few questions on what he sees happening, especially in the PEO side and the workers' comp side and his side of what he's doing right now. And again, 888-404-1010. Make sure you give us a call. We're here to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I might be an insurance geek, but just to have a true comp specialist in the building, it's a rare day. Lucky for our listeners. Plenty coming back with Tobin Robeck, CCI. Don't go nowhere.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We have our guest here. We're going to get to him in a little bit, but Evan, we always do this save of the week. You got anything for us today?
Yeah, we had a real, good one come in real late in the building this week, and kind of fitting to have Tobin here today. But gentleman got a contract, literally needs to go live in the first week of January. He's in multiple states. It was like a 6-state contract. Had a carrier. Current coverage in place, but didn't reciprocate. And that's common. A lot of the carriers, Florida carriers will let you venture out, but a lot of the outlying carriers don't want you to come into Florida. So we were able to get him on with the PEO in all those states. Literally less than a week and a half, he'll be live and compliant. 6 states. And it's not just 6 states. The reality is each state has their own comp threshold. Each state has their own state unemployment tax rate. One of the states, where state and federal unemployment tax drops off after $7,000 here in Florida and a lot of states, was up in the Carolinas. It didn't drop off till $23,000. So that was brutal for him. But hey, real quick, man, it was a good save of the week, and we're proud of it. I mean, that's what the PEO does. It makes sure you're compliant in every state, every market, and day one you've got a professional ready to roll.
Yeah, and believe me, it is not easy when you're working with something like this and have several states and making sure they're compliant. It takes a lot of work, a lot of communication and discussions, and making sure everything works out fine and perfect for the client. So again, working with PEO can help out with situations like this and make things easier for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, we want to hear from you today, folks. 888-404-1010. I see the caller board lighting up. 888-404-1010. In studio today, Tobin Robeck, partner and vice president of sales at Construction Casualty Insurance. Also is co-founder on CompCorrect, which is an artificial intelligence-based claims management program designed for employers. We are lucky to have him, a true expert in comp, and that's pretty much what this show is all about. But before we jump in, Tobin, let's grab this call. Looks like we've got Tim in Tampa. You're on with Everything PEO.
Hey guys, first time caller. Just stumbled across your show today. Appreciate you taking my phone call.
Thanks for calling.
I just actually graduated, got certified to be a commercial agent. And I had a question the whole way through the process. They never really talked about partnering with a PEO or, why you should offer your client PEO solutions or, things like that. I'm having trouble getting appointed with carriers, and so I'm in this rock and a hard place. And, I heard today, and I was hoping maybe, the PEO route could help me while I'm getting going.
Oh, well, absolutely. Tim, good call. I'm going to jump on this, guys.
Okay.
I mean, the reality is, they don't talk about PEOs much through insurance school, but one thing they do teach you to do is to align yourselves with a lot of carriers, right? And so I think our goal, out of today's show, today's topic, is really to understand that if you treat a PEO relationship almost like another carrier, it's only going to bring success to your plate. If and when you can't find that standard market option, the PEO option is always right there behind it. But you did hit a good point, Tim. The reality is the carriers are very stingy with appointments these days, and largely because to continue to appoint agents over and over and over and then be offering declinations on the regular, they're just slowing that traffic down. It's almost like slowing down an inflation play by rising the rates, right? So from there, most agents will pivot to an MGA relationship, right? You get on with an MGA, they already have all those relationships with the carriers, but the same thing can happen if and when that MGA strikes out. They're very likely to put a PEO option in your place, especially if you're shopping the workers' comp. So I don't know if that helps, we can leave your information with Slick online, or you can find us at PEOadvisors.com if you got any other questions.
No, I really appreciate it. Yeah, answer my questions, and I will leave my information with Slick. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the call.
Tobin, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, the reality is if you're a new agent trying to get started in this business, it's very challenging. You know, the ability to be able to get appointments is based on the ability to have premium. And if you don't have premium dollars to present to a carrier, they're not going to have any interest in appointing you. So you've got a chicken egg scenario. And so in order to solve that problem, you have to build as many resources as possible between wholesale relationships, PEO brokerage, PEOs, where you can start to build premiums. So when you go to a carrier, you say, look, I've got, you know, $500,000 or $1 million of premium for you, and they're going to start to listen. But if you don't have any premium, they don't care.
Wow.
No, it's fair. It's a long road at day one.
They want to know they can make money. Everybody's in it to make money and be successful. And if there's no premium dollars there, it's just paper pushing.
Well, Tobin, you're an expert in workers' comp, and you got into this industry. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got in it, how you see things are happening right now?
Yeah, I got in the industry back in 2016. I started in banking and then became a CFO of a construction company. Met my now business partner, who's our primary owner and CEO, Brad Dempton, and realized that insurance was really where I wanted to be, and made a deal with him that I would come help him on the back end of the business as things were getting going, as long as he taught me everything he knew about insurance.
Oh, right.
And so for a year we sat together at nights to learn, and so I could learn the business, and it's been fantastic ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I always kind of make this joke, right? The most self-made millionaires is insurance, right? I mean, you must be doing something right in this business, but obviously that's just having some fun with it. The reality is it's a need, right? I mean, we're at a time, especially right now, you know, times are tough, the economy's down. You know, we're providing something they have to have, right? To pull those permits, to get on the job, it's a have-to-have scenario versus trying to offer, you know, the next most competitive POS system in an industry that's just littered with dozens of them. So when you're providing that need, something they've got to have, it can be a much easier road. But, you know, that's kind of neat, man. You mentioned that pre-2016, not only banking and finance, but in the construction trade. Right, and so I got to imagine that can only be easier trying to help these folks navigate the process, whether it's insurance for the first time, but how to position it and be able to talk to those underwriters a little more savvy can't hurt.
Yeah, at CCI, about 65% of our customers are construction companies, and having been on the other side of the table, having bought it, and knowing how convoluted and difficult it can be to try and understand it, I've really been able to take an approach where I can explain what I always wanted someone to explain to me, and I never got as a business owner. And I also know the reality of a construction site, and you know, underwriters have an idea of, you know, things should be this way, X, Y, and Z, and the reality in life is a little bit more messy. And so knowing the reality allows me to frame that picture better for the underwriter about what's actually happening.
Fair. Well, CCI has obviously had a lot of success. I know you guys are in growth mode over there in a big way. I mean, I always like to kind of hear that entrepreneurial spirit and what you guys are doing well. That's, you know, setting yourselves apart from, you know, all the other agencies out there.
Yeah, we've been really lucky. We've grown the agency by 35% every year since the year we started it, and we've done that by really acting as consultants for our customers. We're not salespeople. We're not out there beating the streets to try and get you to buy our product. We're out here with answers to be able to provide data to you, so as a business owner, you can make a smart decision about how to move forward.
Providing that education that they need, that they're not getting right now. Evan and I, we've mentioned that several times while we're bringing a client on board and working with them, and hearing certain things that come out of their mouths, and we're like, hey, you shouldn't do this, you know, be careful. And it's just, and then they, well, why? And being able to educate them, tell them the reasons why. And again, letting them know, listen, you are the owner, we respect that. But we do not want you to ever say, Lionel and Evan didn't say. something to you.
Yeah.
You know, you just want to continue educating them and letting them know what's going on out there so they can protect themselves. So
Yeah, I mean, being seasoned on both sides of it, you got to be able to have the tough talk, right? The guy that got me in the business had a similar background to you, and this was back in, I got into the business in '03, and that's, the housing boom, and they were building out parts of Florida, and literally we were just walking on job sites, but he could talk their lingo, right? Where, oh, you're using this screw and this nail and this rebar and da da da, and where my approach was totally different. What are you doing? How are you using it? And there was a little bit of an evolution flow for me, but I can only imagine it makes you, stronger, right? Helping them get through that. So kudos to you, my friend.
Appreciate that. It's been wonderful. It's been a great experience.
yeah, you were just mentioning you just hired some more employees, so it must be great right now. It's difficult to find any employees right now, so that's good.
Yeah, we've been lucky. We've been able to build a really strong team that likes showing up to work, that enjoys what they do. So it's easy to attract talent when people walk into our office and there's good energy and people are happy to be there.
Absolutely. Well, looks like we got another call on the board. We want to hear from you folks today. 888-404-1010. You're listening to Everything PEO. We've got Dax from Tampa on the line.
Hey, Dax.
Gentlemen, hey, good evening. More of a Tobin question.
Excellent.
Looking at the write-up, the teaser for the show, very curious in terms of CompCorrect. Tobin, please explain more. Like, what is CompCorrect?
Yeah, we were just about to get into some of that, so you beat me to it, but lay it out there.
Perfect. Yeah, so one of the problems with workers' compensation is that the claims management process can be very challenging. And a lot of the difficulties are actually baked into the law. So if you're an injured employee, there's a week delay in pay, and you don't get that first paycheck until about 17 days after you're injured, and it's for 1 week of pay, so 66 2/3 of 1 week. And then the doctors, statutorily speaking, have up to 2 weeks to send over the doctor's notes. So there are these massive delays in being able to get follow-up care. And the adjusters are busy. Everybody's got a lot going on. They don't have the ability to be proactive. They're reactive. And the employers don't know what they can and can't do and what they can and can't say. So once you get injured, you're stuck in this place where you're on an island with very little money in your pocket, with no follow-up care and very little communication. And so what CompCorrect does is it solves all of those problems by creating a mechanism to fund the employee's wages from day one, getting the doctor's notes so we can get follow-up care set up from day one, as well as developing a return to work program, and then tracking the claim all the way through the claims process to make sure that we're making the best possible decisions based on the outcomes of the claim for the employer and the employee's long-term best interest.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's sharp.
Is there a certain qualification to do this when you bring in a company and trying to assist them?
No, we can actually do it with any single insurance carrier, any single PEO. It is a employer-facing software program that essentially coaches them on how to efficiently take care of their injured employees. One of the major issues that we see is that because of that major delay in wages and follow-up care, there's this big push to litigation. And one of the problems with litigation is, just as you were discussing before, how hard it is to find people. Well, a lot of times when you settle, most carriers will require resignation from the employee. And when that happens, you lose a good employee. And the whole reason you lost that good employee was because the process was baked in to problems for you and for that injured employee. And now, not only have you increased your future premiums because you have a claim, but you potentially have lost a good employee.
Wow.
Well, you're blowing my mind right now. Literally, I've been doing this 20 years, and I think you've hit the nail on the head in a big way, Tobin. The reality is we can use a little more tech in this space. It is super reactive. I mean, Lionel's fortunate enough to work at one of 2 PEOs that actually own their workers' comp carrier. And I would say those 2 PEOs, above all, have a vested interest in claims management. But largely beyond that, these PEOs are just like any other business, right? They've partnered with a payroll software. They've been able to obtain a master comp policy. But a lot of them just use third-party TPAs and nurse case managers and almost listening to what they say versus really wrapping their arms around this thing to get through it efficiently. And so how are you getting the word out on this CompCorrect software?
It's been mostly word of mouth. We've started to do a lot of work with insurance carriers and some PEOs where they have a customer that might have had a lot of losses but really wants to do the right thing but doesn't know how to do it. So they'll suggest our platform in order to provide some rate decreases for them. And we've had a lot of luck with that. Before, you guys were talking about CTRs and issues like that. And so we're able to take that data, run it through our software program, and show what the losses should have been, that you followed our process, and then reposition that to an underwriter to be able to cut a better deal.
That's awesome, because Evan and I, our communication and discussing how to get through it is verbal or email and having that conversation. You actually have a software in place to walk them through step by step on how to go about any claims and how to handle certain situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
No, we were talking about this just last week. You know, the grocery store, for example. I mean, a ankle sprain and a wrist sprain. Both of them, you know, one of them exceeding six figures, one of them on the heels of that. And I look at that, and it's embedded with indemnity payout. For anybody listening, the indemnity payout is the wage reimbursement portion of the claim. You know, like Tobin just mentioned, it's usually, you know, 66 2/3 of your everyday paycheck, and it caps, I think, around $400 or $500. But I have a feeling if that would have been with a PEO that owns their own carrier, or maybe necessarily in your software, this thing wouldn't have bled out to those levels. It's just mismanagement from day one.
Yeah, and it's not really anybody's fault necessarily. It's just a really big lack of communication in the process. And you just really have to take control as an employer of your own destiny. Because if you leave it up to the way the law is set up, and you leave it up to the whims of adjusters who are very good but are overworked and don't have a vested interest in what's going on for you and your injured employee, then you're going to end up in those situations, and you have litigation. And then the reality is once there's litigation, there's almost always a move to settlement, and then you've got the claimant's attorney really trying to drive up the value of the claim in order to get themselves paid and get the injured employee paid over and above what they're going to take out of the settlement.
I find that the biggest conversation I'm having with claims and explaining it to a company or a client on board is, Lionel, what's these reserve? What's the reserves? What is that for? Why is it there? Now, and here's a claim 2016, and it's still sitting there. What do I do? And having that conversation, you need to call these adjusters and this carrier. Is it closed? Do you even know if it's open or closed? No, I didn't pay attention to it. I don't know. And so having that conversation, find out first, is it closed? If it's closed, have that conversation with the carrier and say, why is it still there? Get rid of it, because it is affecting my mod. You know?
Oh, yeah. And what people don't realize is that those reserves go into your underwriting equation.
Yeah.
And they do go into your experience mod. And one of the big things, if you're in the standard market, is that data gets sent to NCCI, the people that develop the experience mods, National Council on Compensation Insurance. It gets sent to them 6 months after the expiration of the policy. So if you have an open claim at that point with reserves, it's going to go into your experience mod. And so most people are only looking at these claims as the renewal comes up. Like, oh, look at these claims, let me go back. But at that point, it's too late. You've already done the damage.
Well, Dax, I hope that was everything. If you want to stick on after the break, you can certainly call back. We've got plenty coming back. I'm intrigued with CompCorrect. I've got a whole bunch of little notes I was just taking there and all kinds of goodies to get into it. There's still time if you want to call in, 888-404-1010. Don't go anywhere. Back with Tobin after the break. All right, we are back. Everything PEO. Lionel, we're going to get right back into it. But I know you've got an everything relevant sitting over there. Throw it at us, my friend.
Well, I was looking and I found this article and I thought it was interesting. So it says a combination of supply chain challenges, workforce issues, and rise prices of construction materials and labor costs have increased the cost of risk, creating a challenging environment for many construction companies and their lenders. The concern is top of their mind of contractors and construction executives across the industry, with 68% of the middle market construction companies inflation as the risk that is expected to be extremely or very challenging to manage in the next 12 months. So again, we're discussing how interest rates and rates are going up, supply and demand is going up.
Labor's never been tougher to find.
You know, Again, you have to pay your employees if you want to keep them. It's going up. I have one company that increased in just 3 weeks, increased their payroll $85,000 in 3 weeks to keep their employees on board.
Now, not through massive growth. You're
no,
saying
no,
by
not through
increasing
massive,
wages.
by increasing wages, $85,000.
Well,
Yeah,
they
so-
hold all the leverage right now. You can go to McDonald's and start out at $16 an hour. If you're a trade carpenter and you're running a crew and you're at 17, shake the pole. I mean, you hold all the power right now.
Yeah, as a construction executive, implement inflation has their business. They should also consider how to magnify the impact of rising material costs, supplies change, the workforce shortage. However, they're careful to pre-plan other risk strategies and consult with insurance agents, brokers, construction executives can help mitigate inflation's impact overall cost risk. In other words, getting with your agent and having a conversation, okay, and talking, and I felt like PEO should have been in there when I was reading this. You know, partnering up with a PEO so you can have these conversations as well to see what we could do to assist and help you with these risks.
One of the things that's so important with all of that, is having conversations with your agent, because especially if you're construction, you're bidding on jobs way out, and all of a sudden it comes out that your mod went from a 0.7 to a 1.5, and you've had a massive increase in your labor burden. You're now bidding that job at a loss. And so understanding where these trends are going and what those costs start to look like for you is going to be really important in managing that profitability.
I think too many businesses wait till it's almost too late, right? Especially if you're thriving, you're growing the business by 50% year after year, and that's when the tricked out Ford Ranger shows up, right? And it's got all the bells and whistles on it, and then the marble floors and the saltwater fish tank, and it's not until there's a slide, whether it's an economic slide, or you lost a big enough contract to really make a dent to the revenue, and then they start to thumb through that, peel that onion, and see where they can trim some fat. If they would almost have that same mindset while things are thriving at an all-time high, they would be super, efficient and be able to roll through those trends a little easier. And I think that's kind of something neat with CompCorrect. We were just kind of dangling through some scenarios right before break there about reserves sticking around, and ultimately costing, the cost of insurance to rise at renewal. We had a large painting contractor on there, and it was nearly a $500,000 reserve. Right, but the gentleman had been back to work within 2 weeks. Clearly never met any of these payouts. But every time he would go to a post follow-up visit, he would still say his back was still sore, his back was still sore. And so they would never close out that claim and never close out that reserve until the claimant would finally go in there and say, I'm 100% healed. And so that thing haunted him. I mean, we kept him as a client for almost a decade over just that one guy not admitting, my back's not sore anymore.
Well, and that's one of the things that's so important about developing a strong return to work program and developing a mechanism to get people back to work, so they don't have that mindset of, oh, I'm just here collecting my lost wages. Like in the state of Florida, return to work is mandatory. So if your employer says we have a job for you, you have to show up. And so we can get people off the couch, which is what creates those mechanisms that allow people to continue to say, oh, it hurts, because it's not changing anything in their life. They're getting their paycheck already, they're getting their needs met. And so if we can get people off the couch and working towards a better goal, it helps everybody in the system because they have something to work towards.
No, that's so true. I think most folks, especially like in Lionel and I's position, we would boast how the PEO can help you with return to work, right? Or as a business owner, if you want to keep your claim mitigation down, be with them every step of the way. We had a limousine scenario. Limousine driver said he had a bad back due to the shocks and struts, right? And ultimately went to the comp clinic, failed his UA, right? Which typically would be you negate your benefits, right off the bat. But of course, the Morgan & Morgan swoops in and says, hey, how do you know that he didn't self-medicate on the way to the clinic because he was in so much pain over those bad shocks and struts? And again, I think our reaction would have been like, hey, if you really want to be proactive on this as a business owner and keep your rates in line, go with them. Have the buddy system, right? Because obviously that burned him. But beyond that, go to the post follow-up. be at that doctor's appointment when they issue the light duty or the return to work. But really, if you have CompCorrect, it sounds like you don't need to do all that.
Yeah, we've definitely developed a mechanism to be able to get that data so we can develop those programs more quickly. Because what you see is there's a lot of people doing return to work, but if you wait for those 2 weeks to get the doctor's notes that the doctors have to send it out, you've already lost. It's too late. Because that person's on the couch, and getting them back off the couch can be really, really challenging. And so, even though return to work is mandatory, you still have required documentation that has to go through. And that's one of the things that CompCorrect does for you, is it sends out the certified mail that's required through the judge of compensation claims to say, look, we've got work for you, you have to show up. And then if you don't show up, we'll send out a letter saying you're out of compliance, and if you continue to be out of compliance, we'll suspend benefits. But the goal really of it is to get people better as quickly as possible, because that's the best outcome for everybody.
Yeah. Let's dive into reserves a little bit more, because I know I'm gonna get the emails, I'm gonna get the texts, and they're like reserve. With my clients, when I talk to them about reserve, I try to simplify it as much as I can. No, not the workers' comp language and the technical terms. So I explain it in this way. You have an employee who's injured on the job. There's a cut in their palm of their hands. It's deep. How deep? Maybe to the bone. They stitch it up. Okay. That claim costs $850 to stitch it up. But their concern is, suppose it gets infected. If there's an infection, what that cost might be. So they come up with this number that they hold in the reserve just in case something does come up. If that if that employee comes back and there's an infection, now there's surgery involved. That's where it comes into play. And some of these cases that we see with wrists, knees, shoulders, and some of them that are not severe, some of these injuries were taken care of, the employee's back to work, but they still held this huge reserve on the side just in case. And that's the part you have to fight. If you know that employee's in work, especially if it's an older claim that's closed, you have to have that conversation with that carrier to try to get rid of it, because it will affect you and carry.
Yeah.
It will last forever if you don't get it off.
There's some actuarial table out there, whether it's through NCCI or the carriers, what the average broken arm costs or the average broken ankle costs this year, but like going back to that grocery store, those weren't even broken arms, those were simple sprains, so due to mismanagement. But, where these actuarial tables are created, they're going to cling to that, right? And that's where that reserve quickly gets thrown on there. It's less about what really happened and more about what the average was over the last 12 months in the state.
Well, and settlements have become so prevalent that as soon as there's litigation on a claim, even if you've done nothing wrong, and just to be clear, in workers' compensation, you can't sue. It's a no-fault system. So someone having an attorney, all they can do is petition for benefits. They can't sue in the normal sense of tort law. And so in that situation, even if you've done everything right and they petition for benefits and there's nothing to petition for because you've given them their indemnity, you've given them their medical and taken care of them, the carriers will still put on reserves for litigation, even though there's nothing actually to be litigated, because the system has become so fraught with settlements.
Yeah, and I hate to use, I thought you were going to say the other word, but the F word, right? I mean, let's talk about it, right? How these claims are ballooning, whether it's mismanagement on both sides of the fence, but the reality is, the TPA, they're going to put in what their max billing can be on that file, right? They're going to put in their max fees. The attorneys are going to put the max billing on the file, and whether they use it all up or not, it's going to be put on there and possibly settled for less, or at the time of closing the claim. But I often wonder, how much of that is max billing versus real billing. And I hate to, kind of put it out there like that, but it's rampant and it's real.
Well, the reality is the carriers are charging based on reserves, based on incurred, paid plus reserves. So those reserves go into that equation. And when you look at workers' compensation from a standard market experience mod standpoint, the experience mod is developed to be punitive because they don't want you injuring people. So for every dollar that gets spent by the insurance carrier and rolled into that experience mod equation, you're going to pay between $4 and $6 back in future premium over the course of the 3 years that claim is going to sit there. So when you think about that, there isn't necessarily an enormous motivation to be closing these claims out more quickly, right? We're not all economically aligned in this system. So it's really important, like I said earlier, to take it into your own hands as an employer and get these things going, because it's the only thing that's going to help you is yourself.
Well, it's amazing that you know these numbers and these percentages, because we're sitting here, sometimes we're wondering, where are these numbers coming from? Well, how did this happen? We're going to have some more of these conversations
Well,
a lot. It's educational. I love it.
We got a couple minutes left here, Tobin. So clearly the system is broken. It's antiquated. It's outdated. It's reactive. You
It's not
got your
broken
arms
if you're an
around.
attorney.
Exactly, max billing. Hit the nail on the head, man. What's broken the most? I mean, if you could pinpoint one thing.
The reality is there's just a really bad delay in communication through the whole process that drags things out that should happen in 24 hours, and it takes weeks. And the doctors aren't required to automatically send out the doctor's notes, right? They have time to do it. There's this massive delay in pay, which is baked in the system to try and stop people from being injured. But the reality is you get that first week back if you've been out for 21 days. So as soon as it's litigated, they're like, oh, you're definitely going to be out for 21 days. Got to get that first week back. And so a lot of things were baked in the system in order to be helpful to try and move it along. But the technology's old, right? Our current law was written in 2003 in Florida. And so the technology is significantly different, and we have this ability to move this data more quickly, which is what CompCorrect does in order to solve those problems.
Anyone that's heard anything today, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Give us a look up on the internet on CompCorrect.com, and all of our data is there to be able to reach out to us.
And so just to hit that one more time, whether they are in a PEO relationship or have a standard market policy, this software works in either scenario.
Yes, sir.
And
That's
they-
what we do.
And they don't have to be, I mean, essentially you're adopting this directly with the business owner?
Correct.
Right? It's not that the partner has to, or the carrier, has to partner with it?
It's just employer interfacing program that helps them manage the claim themselves, and we send the data to the insurance carrier via email, so they don't even need to log into the system.
Wow.
Wow.
Excellent.
Well, Tobin, we've worked together in a couple of cases ourselves. Tell me your interpretation, how you felt working with a PEO and trying to help a client get them all set up for workers' comp.
Yeah, PEO is fantastic. There's definitely a space for it in the market, especially when you've got high-risk businesses, and especially when you're thinking about like a startup high-risk business, right? Like if I'm a roofer and I've got 3 or 4 guys and I'm working, there's not a single carrier in the state that's going to take that, right? And Southeast is really the spot to be able to help somebody grow their business and become successful and give somebody a chance. And we've had a ton of success doing those sorts of deals where, we're really trying to establish ourselves and do the right thing, but no one's given us a chance.
Yeah. No, I mean, we talk about it a lot, whether you're 1 employee, 100, and there's risk palettes at all different ranges, but you're stepping into literally the equivalent of Fortune 500 benefits day one, right? You're stepping into a buying power that simply just does not exist. As most businesses do start up with 1 or 2 employees, the rates are so low that's very little premium. Doors are shutting at every turn. We're quickly approaching that time period where almost 2 out of 3, at least blue-collar businesses, are with a PEO in Florida. But I hate to call it that small to medium-sized niche. I mean, Lionel just finished wrapping up a 380-man case, $23 million in payroll. PEO Advisors just wrapped up an 86-man, $5 million payroll, and a partner of ours just wrapped in a $45 million payroll. So the days of PEOs only being for the small to medium-sized business have vanished, right? There's a limited liability shift that when they really kind of get into it, the business owner can appreciate.
And it's not all about cost constantly. Yes, we want to see if we could give you the best rate as possible. But for those who've had issues with claims and having someone to help them manage it and how to handle those situations and walk them through those claims, that's been helpful. Understanding frequency issues. You having too many claims. What's going on? Do you have a safety program in place? And the severity issue. You had a large claim. Why? And let's see if we can make sure that doesn't happen again. So I believe that's real huge in the PEO industry.
Well, heck, man, we've enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully we can get you back sometime in, the new year
I'll be here.
and
Oh,
see
yeah.
how CCI is developing.
Because I'm fascinated about these numbers you just brought up earlier. I
Yeah,
want to
no.
learn some more about that.
We got to get the word out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we've got Mason Dorner coming in next week. Just exited a tech startup for $1.5 billion, a SaaS specialist. Looking forward to it. Lionel, catch you 7 days from now.
Yeah, everyone stay warm, all right? Don't get sick. I got sick people in the house. It's going around. Be careful.
It is. Be merry. Enjoy Christmas, and we appreciate all the callers today. As we always end the show, love God, appreciate your PEO, enjoy your staff, and just know we're on a 167-hour break.
You've been listening to Everything PEO, where as another lesson comes to a close, another business gets smarter. Tune in next Wednesday at 6 p.m. so they can add your company to their satisfied group of savvy business graduates. Everything PEO.